species. Let's go into that into some detail. We know that science says life began on this planet in the early times by various gases reducing atmospheres coming into existence around our planet. And if you pass sparks through that, you get various organic materials that you can trap. And that's how the organic matter arose on this planet. Trouble is that you would have to have all the conditions just right for those molecules to form. And they get destroyed the minute they are formed, the split second they are formed. So you have to remove them from the atmosphere. Major problem. Also, the present atmosphere, if you look down there, has oxygen in it. So it is it's not a reducing atmosphere, it's an oxidizing atmosphere. And those molecules for life would never be able to be formed. And if you look at the primitive Earth, as they say, what it looked like, you will see that it has water. If it has water, we know that water will be struck by cosmic rays. If there is no ozone layer, if there was no oxygen, like they say, then there was no ozone. If there was no ozone, then the water would be struck by these cosmic radiation, and it would split into oxygen and hydrogen. So if you have water, you always have oxygen. So you can never have an atmosphere like that without oxygen. So you run into major problems how life came into existence. If you take the amino acids in our system, in our body that we need, all living organisms need amino acids, they have nitrogen in them. Now where do they get the nitrogen from? Now they have to get it from ammonia out of the atmosphere. If you take these structures which are in our DNA, they also have nitrogen in them, but for ring structures like that to form, all the nitrogen has to be changed to hydrogen cyanide. Wow! So now you have no nitrogen up there, you have everything in cyanide form. For the amino acids, you need everything as ammonia. If you want the sugars to form, like you have in DNA, for example, you cannot get them if there is ammonia in the atmosphere. Big problem. You need totally different conditions for everything to form. So the probability of it happening is so remote as for all intents and purposes to be non-existent. To get the molecules, even if they could form, to form macromolecules, to join up, tip, and to make the strings that we have in our DNA or in our proteins, the probability is infinitesimally small. It has never been demonstrated because you need enzymes to do this. So how do you get an enzyme to form if you don't have an enzyme to do what you want the enzyme to do in the first place? You get my drift? So let's talk probabilities. Let us assume that you have a bomb which is placed under a huge stack of wood, and you have an explosion and it goes boom. What is the probability that the splinters will fall down and form a perfect little house with functioning windows and doors and everything just immaculate? What is the probability? Well, it's extremely remote. Would you agree? All right. But if you look at science, let's say the probability is 1 to the number of particles in the entire universe. How many atoms in your fingertip? Billions, right? Zillions, billions and billions and billions and billions and zillions. So how many atoms in this room? How many atoms in the entire universe? Wow! How many, not even atoms, particles, protons, hadrons, quarks, neutrons, electrons in the entire universe? Every galaxy, every gas cloud, every planet, every single thing in the entire universe. How many of those particles? I'll tell you, 10 to the power of 80. Doesn't look very big, right? It's a massive figure. The probability of the molecules coming into existence, the probability of the molecules forming life, is far greater than even that. So we're not talking boom, little house. We're talking boom, New York City. Do you believe it? With escalators working, no problem. That's the type of probability we're talking about. Dobzhansky once worked it out that from one species to go to another would take 100 would take 100 generations or 1,000 generations, whichever way you wanted it, with at least 100 or 1,000, either way, point mutations. So that is 100 to the power of 1,000. That is such a huge number, you don't even want to begin, because it's the number of particles in billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions for eternity universes. Impossible. Now, science has an easy way of dealing with this. Very easy way. There's a book called The Blind Watchmaker, which says, who cares? The fact is that we are here, therefore it happened. Right? But I just want to show you in this lecture how far we have to go to believe in this process called chance. DNA contains, this is a DNA molecule, contains all the information as to who and what we are. Is that right? And every organism contains that same DNA. Now that DNA we call our genotype. So that's genotype, is all the genes present in that first cell. So what comes together from father and mother, that's what we have in our genes, that's our genotype. Phenotype is what you actually are. Which genes are expressed and what you look like. Alright? Let me explain that a little bit more. So this over here is the DNA on the left, that's the genotype. And on the right is what that individual looks like, that's the phenotype. Everybody with me? You know those two words now? Genotype, phenotype? Okay, remember them. Genotype, phenotype. Example. A law in evolution says natural selection operates only at the level of the phenotype. All right? It only operates at the level of the